I can never forget the night that changed my life forever. Everything seemed normal. My roommate Allie and I had just returned to our apartment after a long day. We were both tired and going about our usual routines. He was scrolling through his phone on the couch, and I was getting ready for bed. As I entered the bathroom to brush my teeth, something felt off. You know that eerie sensation when you feel like you're being watched? I tried to shake it off as just fatigue, but as I looked into the mirror, my heart froze. There, in the reflection, I saw something standing behind me. A shadowy figure, barely distinguishable, but its presence was undeniable. I spun around instantly, but there was nothing, just the empty bathroom. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, it happened again. This time, the figure was clearer, its outline more defined. It was taller than me, and it had this cold, dark aura. My blood ran cold as I realized that this was no figment of my imagination. I blinked, and it was gone again. I splashed water on my face, trying to calm myself down. Maybe I was just tired, I thought. I left the bathroom in a hurry and went to join Ali in the living room. I didn't tell him what I saw, not wanting to sound crazy. We watched TV for a while, trying to distract ourselves from the overwhelming silence that had settled in the apartment. But even as we laughed at the jokes on screen, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Later that night, I woke up to a strange noise, like a low whisper. At first, I thought it was Ali talking in his sleep, but when I turned over, I saw that his bed was empty. My heart started pounding as I realized the whispering was coming from the bathroom. I hesitated, but I had to check. As I approached the bathroom door, the whispering stopped abruptly, and the door creaked open just a fraction on its own. I stood there, frozen in fear, my hand trembling as I reached for the light switch. The light flickered on, and the bathroom was empty, except for the mirror. The mirror was fogged up, as if someone had been breathing on it, but we hadn't used the shower that night. And then I saw it, words slowly forming on the glass, as if written by an invisible hand. "Get out!" I stumbled back, my heart racing, and ran to wake Ali. But as I shook him awake, I saw it again. This time, not in the mirror, but standing at the foot of my bed. The shadowy figure was clearer than before, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. Ali saw it too, and we both screamed as it started moving toward us. We bolted out of the apartment that night, never to return. It all started with a simple request from my new roommate, James. "Whatever you do, don't open the closet," he said casually as we were moving my stuff into the apartment. I laughed, thinking it was some kind of prank. But when I looked at his face, I realized he was dead serious. "Why not?" I asked, but he just shrugged and said, "It's locked for a reason." I didn't press further. The closet was in the spare room that James used for storage, so I didn't have any reason to go in there anyway. But his warning stayed with me, lingering in the back of my mind. A few weeks passed, and everything seemed normal. James and I got along well enough, and life in the apartment was pretty uneventful. But I couldn't stop thinking about that closet. Every time I walked past the spare room, I felt this weird pull, like something was urging me to open that door. One night, curiosity got the better of me. James was out of town for the weekend, and I found myself standing in front of the closet, the small padlock gleaming in the dim light. It was ridiculous, I told myself. It was just a closet, but something about it felt off. Before I knew it, I was rummaging through James's things, searching for the key. It didn't take long to find it, hidden under a stack of old magazines in his drawer. I hesitated, key in hand, feeling a sudden rush of guilt. But then I heard a faint scratching noise coming from the closet, and my heart skipped a beat. The sound was so subtle, like something moving inside. My curiosity turned to dread, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know what was in there. I unlocked the padlock and slowly opened the door. The closet was pitch black, the darkness seeming to swallow the light from the hallway. I reached in, feeling around for a light switch, but my hand brushed against something cold and smooth, like metal. As I fumbled to turn on the light, the scratching noise grew louder, more frantic. I finally found the switch, and the light flickered on, revealing an old, dusty mirror leaning against the back wall of the closet. But what really caught my eye was the small wooden box sitting on the floor, its lid slightly ajar. The scratching was coming from inside the box. My breath caught in my throat as I crouched down, staring at the box. My hands were shaking as I reached out and lifted the lid. Inside was something I can only describe as wrong. It was a small carved figure, about the size of my hand, with twisted, contorted features that made my skin crawl. Its eyes were hollow, and its mouth was open in a silent scream. And there was something else, a piece of paper, folded and tucked beneath the figure. I unfolded the paper, and my heart pounded in my chest as I read the words written in shaky handwriting. Do not disturb the cursed one. Keep it locked away, or it will awaken. A chill ran down my spine, and I quickly put the figure and the note back into the box, slamming the lid shut. But the scratching noise didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, like something was trying to get out. Panicked, I tried to close the closet door, but it wouldn't budge. It was like the door had become stuck, or something was holding it open. And then I felt it, a cold breath on the back of my neck, followed by a low, raspy whisper. You shouldn't have opened it. I spun around, but there was nothing there. The room was empty, but the air was thick with a sense of dread. The scratching had stopped, but now there was a new sound, a faint, almost imperceptible whispering coming from the mirror in the closet. I backed away slowly, my eyes locked on the mirror, and then, to my horror, I saw it. The reflection of the carved figure, standing behind me, its hollow eyes staring right at me. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me. I locked the closet as fast as I could and ran to my room, my heart racing. I couldn't sleep that night, every creak of the apartment filling me with terror. When James returned the next day, I told him everything. His face went pale as I described what had happened, and without a word, he grabbed his things and left the apartment. I never saw him again. I moved out soon after, but I still have nightmares about that closet, about the figure in the box. Sometimes, I swear I can still hear the scratching, even though I'm miles away from that place. And I'll never forget James's final words to me before he disappeared. It's too late now. It's awake.
You think you know someone until you live with them. That's what I kept telling myself as things started getting strange with my roommate, Emily. We had been friends for years before deciding to share an apartment, and at first everything was perfect. But then, one day, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. Have you ever felt like someone's watching you in your sleep? I laughed it off, thinking she was joking, but her serious expression sent a chill down my spine. Why would you ask that? I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. She shrugged and looked away, mumbling something about a weird feeling she'd been having lately. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the unease her question had stirred in me. My bedroom door was slightly ajar, and the darkness outside seemed to press in, making me feel exposed. I brushed it off as paranoia and eventually fell asleep. But then it started happening. I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like someone was in the room with me. My heart would be racing, and I'd lie there, too afraid to open my eyes, just waiting for the feeling to pass. Each time I convinced myself it was just a bad dream. But deep down I knew something was wrong. One night it got worse. I woke up with a start, my heart pounding in my chest. This time I couldn't ignore the sensation. The air in the room felt heavy, like it was charged with something unseen. I slowly opened my eyes, scanning the darkness, and that's when I saw it. There was a figure standing in the corner of my room, half hidden in the shadows. It was tall and thin, with a presence that radiated pure malice. My breath caught in my throat as I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, that it was just my imagination, but it didn't disappear. It stayed there, motionless, watching me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then suddenly the figure moved, slowly, deliberately. It started walking toward me. I could hear the floorboards creak under its weight as it approached, and I knew I couldn't stay in that bed. Summoning every ounce of courage, I jumped out of bed and sprinted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I ran to Emily's room, desperate for some explanation, some reassurance that I wasn't going crazy. But when I burst into her room, I found her sitting on the edge of her bed, wide awake, staring blankly at the wall. Her eyes were hollow, and she didn't seem to notice me at first. "Emily!" I shouted, grabbing her shoulders. "There's someone in my room!" She slowly turned to face me, her expression vacant. "I know," she whispered. "It's been here for weeks." A cold dread settled over me as her words sank in. "What do you mean? Why didn't you say anything?" She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I tried, but it wouldn't let me. Every time I thought about telling you, it would punish me." She looked down at her arms, and that's when I noticed the bruises, dark, finger-shaped marks that wrapped around her wrists and forearms. I stumbled back, horrified. "Emily, we need to get out of here. We need to leave right now." But before she could respond, the temperature in the room plummeted. My breath came out in visible puffs as the air turned icy. Emily's eyes widened with fear, and she pointed behind me. "It's here." I turned around, and there it was, the figure, standing in the doorway, blocking our only escape. Its eyes were dark voids, and its presence filled the room with a suffocating darkness. The door slammed shut, trapping us inside. The figure moved closer, and as it did, the lights in the room began to flicker. I grabbed Emily's hand, trying to think of a way out, but she just stood there, staring at the figure with a look of resignation. "It's too late," she whispered. "We can't escape it." I refused to accept that. I dragged her toward the window, desperate to find another way out. But the window wouldn't budge. It was like the entire apartment had become a prison, sealing us in with this malevolent presence. As the figure loomed closer, I felt a pressure in my chest, like something was squeezing the life out of me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was hold on to Emily and pray that it would end. But it didn't. The figure reached out, its icy hand brushing against my skin, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, a darkness that seeped into my very soul. My vision blurred, and I thought I was going to pass out. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished. The room returned to normal. The air warmed up. The lights stopped flickering, and the door creaked open on its own. Emily and I were left standing there, shaking and gasping for breath. We didn't speak. We just ran out of the apartment, leaving everything behind. We never went back. I don't know what that thing was or why it targeted us, but I know it wasn't human. It was something evil, something that fed on our fear. And even now, months later, I still feel its presence, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. Because once it finds you, it never really lets go.